Buongiorno, and welcome to Virtual Travel Escapes, our little web series that we're exploring different and fun and unique destinations from around the world. So we really hope you're enjoying our little series and will enjoy today, and that it kind of builds your bucket list and places you guys might want to continue think about and where you want to travel to. So welcome, and I'm Rhonda Svian, the leisure manager with Paull Travel, and my lovely co-host, Julie Beckdash. Good morning, Julie. Buongiorno.
Yeah, good morning, Rhonda, and good morning, everybody. Welcome.
Thank you all again for taking some time this morning and it's afternoon in some of the locations where you guys are viewing us from. I know we've got some folks out there in Ontario and Manitoba. So hello. Thank you again for joining us. I think we're all getting a little antsy about flying again and heading away on vacation. So, this has been a really great opportunity for us to visit some places virtually. And, the time is going to come when we're going to be able to actually physically go on holidays to all of our little dream places. But right now, it's the perfect time to really start planning. And just a little tip for you guys, you know what? People are planning. I know Julie and I have been getting a lot of requests over the last couple of weeks for 2022. So it's looking like 22 is going to be a good travel year for everybody. And fingers crossed, here's hoping. So, just a little reminder, all of our episodes are being taped. Now, last week we did Turkey, and there was just a little glitch in the system with Zoom and the recording, so they're working on it. So, it will be up on our website very shortly. But all of our other webinars that we've done in the past are there. So that's paulltravel.com/webinars is where you'll find those. So keep a watch if you missed last week and are really interested in Turkey. It'll be up there very soon. Next week, we're going to be actually visiting Hawaii, and we're going to look at the big island of Hawaii. I think that'll be really fun. I know spring is in the air, but it's still nice to think about some tropical destinations. So tune in next week. That's March 25th at a regular time at 4 p.m. So today, Italy. Italy is such a popular destination. I think for a lot of us Canadians, Julie, you probably agree, it's one of our most popular requested places in Europe. So Julie and I really kind of thought it would be really great to kind of showcase different regions of Italy because they are quite diverse. And, it's hard to do it all in one webinar. So we thought we would focus on a few different places. And a few months ago, we did the southern part of Italy. So now we're going to look at the Italian Riviera, which kind of incorporates Portofino, Santa Margherita. So it'll be a really, really good webinar to kind of tune into today. So thank you for joining us. I actually was really lucky on a Windstar cruise a few years ago. A couple of the ports was Portofino, and it's so beautiful. It's such a lovely little port. So I had a chance to explore, and I took the ferry across into Santa Margherita. Really not enough time to spend with just a day. So there's just so much to kind of explore. It's, I think, one of those areas of Italy a lot of people don't really think about when they're planning a trip, but it's a perfect little, maybe a little more low key to spend a little time for a few days out of your holiday journey. So you're going to learn a little bit about it today. And I'm going to turn this over to you, Julie, to introduce our fantastic and wonderful guests today.
Thank you so much, Rhonda. That would be a treat and just a little tease to go off for only a day in that area. But yeah, I bet it looks just like it does in the postcard. So
pretty.
Yeah, good. Well, again, we're so grateful for you all to be with us. And we feel such an honor to work with such a company like TFL Tours that we have as a preferred. They're called a destination management company, which we have mentioned and had before on our calls, but they specialize in Italy, and they're like having a best friend or a host right in Italy. So we work with them, and we let them know what our clients' interests are, what their needs are, and they customize tailor-made trips. So these are not organized tours, multi-day tours. These are independent, tailored to you on what you like to do, what you want to see, and how you like to travel. So I will pass it over to Federica, who is the CEO, the heart and mind of TFL Tours, and joining her is Alessandra, which they've been working together for about 17 years. And so she'll pass it over to Alessandra after. So thank you so much for being with us today, and I'll hand it over to you.
Hello, thank you. Buongiorno. Well, it's buonasera for us, but it is a buongiorno for you, you know, time difference. First of all, thank you very much for this fantastic presentation and for inviting us. For us, it's a big opportunity to be here with you to explain you a little bit of one of our favorite destinations in Italy, which is the Italian Riviera, but Alessandra will definitely tell you more about that. As Julie and Rhonda told you, we are a destination management company. We're based in Tuscany, but we work all over Italy, and we only work with travel advisors, but we only work with customized itineraries. What I mean is that you should go to your professional travel advisor, like Paull Travel advisors, explain them what you have in mind for your dream holiday in Italy, and we will be able to tailor make it for you and create your perfect journey. Everything is personalized at TFL Tours. I mean, we don't have any catalog, anything kind of pre-planned. It's just on the spot. And the Italian Riviera, as I told you, is a wonderful destination. I really hope that when we restart and when you will be able to come to Italy again, which I really hope it's going to be very soon, you should consider this area. First of all, because it's a quiet, relaxed area, and it is really well located in relation to some other interesting parts of Italy that you could visit. Like, for example, it's not far from Tuscany. It's about 3 hours driving from Florence, so it could be combined with Florence. It could be combined with Piedmont or French Riviera, you know, the Nice, that part, Monte Carlo, which is only 3 hours driving. And it's even close to Milan. Milan, which is about 3 hours driving, or Lake Como, for example. So it's really a destination I hope you will consider, and definitely one of my favorite. But I'll let Alessandra speak now because she's the expert. She's our best guide in the area, and I've been knowing her. She's a good friend to me, of course, like most of our guides around the country. And she's definitely the best person to take you virtually to Portofino and its surrounding, to the Italian Riviera, because we're going there. Eh? Let's go. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Federica, and buonasera, everybody. As she said, my name is Alessandra, and I live and work in the region of Liguria. That's what we're going to talk about today. I actually work in the region, but I actually live on the Riviera. And that's, you know, it sounds really like I'm sitting down and sipping a glass of wine every day. I usually work, and not at this time, unfortunately, but you can see a beautiful view of Portofino behind me. This is just, you know, perhaps the most famous place of the Italian Riviera. But I would also like today to talk to you about the region of Liguria and the city of Genoa as well. Genoa is the capital city of the region of Liguria. And so if you're ready, I'm ready. Hopefully my screen will be ready as well.
We're ready.
Sorry, I need just a second here. And I needed I knew this is gonna happen, right? But it's here. Can you see it? No. Wait. Sorry about that.
Yeah, it looks good. We just need to just expand it into the presentation mode, Alessandra.
Yeah, but why is it? Sorry, guys. I knew this was gonna happen because I'm too old for the technology. And for some reason, I cannot take this away.
I meant to mention at the beginning in my introduction, I had some clients travel in the last few years with TFL, and they sent me an email when they got back and said, the hotel made our friends so envious when they heard where we stayed. The tour guides were great along with the actual tour. They were very informative. He said, I have to tell you about one of the drivers we had. He looked like someone out of a James Bond movie. He treated us like royalty. He was so nice and accommodating, knew the areas we went to and explained the history and where to go and what to do. And oh yes, could he drive that Mercedes? That was just a little bit of feedback from some clients who've been with TFL. So,
I don't know why, for some reason now it is stuck. And
just at the top there, Alessandra, just under presentation.
Presentazione, Alessandra.
Yeah. Just where.
Yeah, but for some reason the
Clicca
so
su
sorry,
presentazione, Ale. Nella barra in cima.
No, it says that. Sorry. So sorry. It's not. I don't know why it disappeared.
Next to diapositiva. Next to diapositiva, you've got presentazione.
I know, but it's covered by a line that is there.
Prova a farlo allora da sopra la stellina, dove c'è lo schermo lì.
I'm so sorry, guys. Can you just give me a minute?
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Of course, we practiced it like 5 times and it worked. That's okay. Try it again.
Yeah, I was just going to comment from Catherine. She made it in the chat box. She mentioned about there's a Positano diary on Facebook, which is definitely a lovely photo journey, and about Stanley Tucci's. He's got a series on CNN and it's Searching for Italy, and it's actually really good. If anybody gets a chance to watch it, it is focusing on different areas and the food, and it does kind of take a little bit off the beaten path. So it's great. I don't know, Federica, do you guys, have you seen that at all?
I haven't seen it, but I love Stanley Tucci, and I will definitely have to watch that for sure. And look at my last name, Tucci. So he could be a relative. When I was a tour leader a long time ago, when I was taking groups from cruise ships, right, to the cities of art, I used to joke with my clients saying that Stanley Tucci was my uncle. It was just a joke, unfortunately.
I'm sorry, can you see it now?
No.
No, devi Ale, ti scrivo.
Yes.
Condividi.
Yeah. There's also a really another show too, just while we're just waiting for the presentation to start. Oh my gosh, it's just completely escaped me. There's an actress who, because in Italy, there's certain areas of Italy which you can buy a home for €1. And she's done this. It's on the Home and Travel or the Home Network. Oh my gosh, I've completely lost her name. She starred in many, many movies. She's in. Oh my gosh. Okay, now I'm gonna have to look it up. But it's a really interesting thing to watch as well. It kind of showcases some areas in Italy. But there's so many shows out there and so many travel shows on Italy that you can just really immerse yourself in the country. Yeah, definitely. So, Federica, you had mentioned that this is one of your favorite regions in Italy. Like, when's the last time that you'd visited?
Actually, I go to Portofino, Santa Margherita, and Genoa very often because it's quite close to Tuscany, as I said, and I live in Livorno. I'm based in Livorno, so it's just 2 hours driving to get there. And but the last time was, I think, fall 2019, because then, of course, last year I didn't travel that much and I didn't go to that area. But I really hope I can visit soon because it's particularly beautiful, especially in spring. I love it in April and May and September and October, early October, when it's a little bit quieter.
Nice.
Bye, Ale.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Oh,
Alessandra, now because of what you did, you have to invite us all right now to the Italian Riviera. We will
I know,
come tomorrow,
I am,
right?
I am so sorry. I feel like
okay.
really, really silly. Sorry. I'm ready to start now.
Wait.
Excuse me again, all of you.
No,
So we're ready to take our trip to the Italian Riviera. I know that this name means a lot of things, but basically Riviera means by the sea. And so many times we think, why do we call only this area the Italian Riviera if Italy has, you know, over 8,000 kilometers or 5,000 miles of coastline, but we only call this the Italian Riviera, which actually is historically the first place where people started to come from mostly Northern Europe during the holidays, and that was in the winter time. This was really a winter resort when in the 1800s it was way too far to go to the south of Spain or the Canary Islands or the Caribbean, and people decided from north of Europe to spend winters here on the Italian Riviera because of the mild climate, basically. So today we're going to talk about the Riviera and the city of Genoa. But before that, we need to have a look at the map, the old way, not Google Maps, like an old map, and see where the region of Liguria is. It's the little region that you see in green over here. So we're evidently in the northwestern part of Italy. It's a little region squeezed between the mountains and the sea, between northern regions like Piedmont and Tuscany on the other side, and the Ligurian Sea, which is part of the Mediterranean Sea. It only has a little over 1,500,000 residents, and a good part of these residents are concentrated in the area of the capital city, which is Genoa, which is right in the middle. The city of Genoa is one of the 4 provinces that we have in the region of Liguria, and is the central one over here. So what we're going to talk today is mainly the area of Genoa, which is right here, and this peninsula, which is the one sticking out from the coastline, the only peninsula that sticks out from the coastline, that is called the Peninsula of Portofino, or the Mountain of Portofino, as we call it. Of the 4 provinces, the one of Imperia, which is the pink one all the way to the left, is the one closer to the border of France. France is only about 2 hours from Genoa. And on the other side, right here, you have the province of La Spezia, and the very final part of the province of La Spezia is the very, very famous area of the Cinque Terre that everybody has heard of. The area was a Cinque Terre, is now probably the most popular one in, well, all over the world and in North America as well. And there are 5 little villages that nobody knew until about 25 years ago, when I started to do some guiding about 25 years ago. Nobody wanted to go to the Cinque Terre. They didn't have that name either. You know, it was sort of put together when they became heritage of UNESCO. And it was some German hikers that started to discover this area because it's beautiful for hiking. And then it has become more and more popular through the years. And now it's a very, very famous and also very crowded area, unfortunately. So we're going to stay in the province or in the metropolitan city of Genoa today. It's much easier. I know there'd be a lot of things, a lot of places that I could talk about, but I didn't want this presentation to be sort of a list of places, but to concentrate a little bit more about a specific area. This is again the region of Liguria, very narrow, as you can see. Over here to the left, we have the Maritime Alps, which are actually part of the Alps. And then from about here all the way to the other side and behind the Cinque Terre and then over to the central part of Italy are the Apennines, which are the 2nd highest mountain in Italy, and they run just very close to the coast. So we have a very, very limited space between the mountains and the sea, and that's basically where everybody lives. Everybody lives along the coast here. If you have the chance to fly over Liguria, you just realize that 95% of its territory is just mountains and hills. And along the coastline, it's sort of very crowded because we all live by the coast. The city of Genoa, as we said, is right in the middle of the region, dividing the two so-called Riviera. The Eastern Riviera, that's basically what we're going to talk about today. That's the part towards the region of Tuscany that is all the way to the east. And the Western Riviera, which is the part from Genoa towards the French Côte d'Azur. And in a way, it's more similar to that part. This is a general view of the port of Genoa. What we see here is actually the natural part of the port of Genoa, which is the one that was used way before the Romans in this area. And then during the Roman time and all the medieval time is the part that grew before the 1200s, more or less. And then now the biggest part of the port has been moved west, that is on the right-hand side. And in this area, we have still the passengers area, so cruises and ferries, and in a relatively new part, which is called the Old Port area. So the very old part of the port, which was the one that the Romans used, just to give you an idea of how old it was, has been turned into a leisure area. It's a very nice and important part of the city of Genoa right now. The port, as I said, has been moved west. This was an empty area that was left like this for a long, long time. And finally, they decided to change it and give it back to the tourists, of course, but especially to the Genoese, because it's a large area. The main tourist attraction in this area is the aquarium, which is the largest one in Italy and one of the largest in Europe. And then we have museums, restaurants, movie theaters, area for children. This structure that you see right here in the middle, it's an ice skating ring in the winter. And in the summer, they have concerts and music and shows. Well, they had, not now. And this big thing, this structure with those, with this weird shape is actually on its left-hand side, it's an elevator. And it's a copy of the old cranes that were so popular in the, you can see here all the way to the right, the elevator that takes you up to 50 meters, so you can have a great view. And it's a copy of the old cranes that were so popular in this area. You can see here the city is built just behind on the hills. And this is still part of the Old Port area. This is a sort of a bubble in which you have tropical plants. It's just in the middle was a little bit the symbol of this area as well. Although the aquarium is the main tourist attraction, it was opened in 1992 on the occasions of the celebrations of the 500 years of discovery of America. It had attracted so many tourists since then. We are usually about 800,000 tourists a year, visitors for the aquarium, and luckily most of them also stop a couple of days in the city. So Genoa, that was not considered a tourist place in Italy, is now becoming really popular, thanks to the aquarium, thanks to the cruise ships, but also because it is a wonderful city. It is the biggest historical center in Italy after Rome. It's a huge pedestrian area, of which you can see here in this picture about half of it, or a little bit less than half of it, with its towers. It's the bell tower of the cathedral, which is the one just behind with the black and white stripes, the building, and especially the narrow and beautiful little streets of the old town. It was built between the 11th and the 15th century. And that's the medieval part. Then we have a part that is dedicated to the Renaissance palaces, because the rich families of Genoa was an independent republic, has been an independent republic for about 600 years, with the Doge, exactly like in Venice, as a chief of the government, but he was basically ruled by the noble families. And the noble families had their beautiful palaces. But when they were tired to be in that area with all of this building, they moved to a little hill that is now heritage of UNESCO, that hill where they built all of their palaces, and most of them are now museums, or they're open to the public, but sometimes they're still inhabited by families. So a part of the center, the historic center, is looks like this, with the old building repainted in nice colors. This idea we're going to see on the coast a lot. And so one part looks like this, the narrow alleys, the nice little restaurants, and the other part is just the beautiful palaces where the noble families lived. The one you see in the picture is actually called the Royal Palace. We didn't have a king until we became a part of Italy after 1861, and the kings of Italy, the new kings of Italy that were coming from Piedmont, chose this beautiful residence of the family Balbi as their royal palace here in Genoa. So today is a museum, is one of the many palaces that can be visited. This is a picture of the Cathedral of San Lorenzo, St. Lawrence. This style, if you've been to Tuscany, I'm sure you remember that the black and white stripes are very typical of the region of Tuscany, and is also a style that we find a lot in the region of Liguria. The characteristic of most of the buildings in Genoa is that because of the lack of space, each building has been rebuilt a few times. So you can never find, or almost never find, in the city of Genoa a building that is only medieval, only Renaissance, only the 12th century, only the 16th century. It's a mixture of architecture, it's a mixture of styles, because they kept rebuilding on top of the previous building, and especially churches, as the needs and the styles were changing, were rebuilt a few times. So once you go inside, and this is to give you an idea, you have the Gothic part, that's the part with the black and white stripes, and then the main altar was cut and the church was rebuilt, starting from where you see the white columns over here. And so this part, you only see one little part of it, is all Baroque. So it was built about 400 years later, and so the bell tower was built higher, and many things were readjusted to the needs and especially the style of the century. If you go like 10 minutes out of the center, you will find the nice coves and little places like this one. This is one of the most popular ones in Genoa. It's called Boccadasse. It's an old fisherman little area, and today is full of nice restaurants, and it's right at the end of Genoa Promenade, that, as in the French Côte d'Azur, as in Nice or in Cannes, is one of the most popular places in Genoa, where the Genoese spend their Sunday afternoon going back and forth, eating pizza and ice cream. Of course, the medieval center lasted almost until the beginning of the 1800s, and then the city had to grow because the population grew and everything was changing. So a new big part was built. This is the part that was built in the middle of the 19th century. This is the main square that is called Piazza de Ferrari, nothing to do with the Ferrari cars, but this is just the same name, where a lot of the buildings that you see around this picture show you the style of, which is mostly called neoclassical style of this area. This is the facade of the Ducale Palace, which is right behind the piazza that we just saw. Ducale, like in Venice, was the house of the Doge. The Ducale Palace was rebuilt a few times. This is the final version of it. And if you look on the top left, you can see what's left of the tower. The building is behind that new building of the 16th century of the original palace of the medieval times. And then we have a more recent part, which is even a little bit further away from that one, which was built mainly in the 1930s. And this is more or less the style that is more common in a lot of cities. In Genoa, you can have a lot of means of transportation because it's built on the hills. So of course we have buses and cars, but we have elevators and we have funiculars and little trains going up on the hills. So that's another experience that a lot of people want to try as they're in Genoa. And most of the time, if you take the public elevator elevators. In just a few minutes, you're up on top of the hill and you have a great view on the city of Genoa. So there's a lot to do in the city of Genoa that is not considered still a very touristy, or, you know, people don't think about going to Genoa. But really, I could talk about it forever, but I will stop now. But it's really a place that a lot of people fall in love with because it's so different from the other cities in Italy, and it has really a lot to offer because of this magnificent history. But if from Genoa we move just about 30-45 minutes to the east, then we get on the so-called Riviera. And if you look at this picture, it shows you really the very first hills that you have over here. So as we were saying before, most of the buildings are concentrated on this line, and then the peaks behind, which are which are the mountains that we mentioned before, the Apennines. So you can sort of see 2 or 3 types of mountains always higher in a row just behind. And this is why we do have a mild climate, although we are in the north of the country. That's because we're very sheltered from these mountains that are right behind us. This is a map. Do you remember we were seeing this square peninsula on the big map, just a little bit to the right or to the east of Genoa? And this is it. This is what we call the mountain of Portofino, or the peninsula of Portofino. The only road that cuts the peninsula is the one that you see over here. To the top is the red one, and everything that you see underneath that, so all of this area, is footpaths. So they're hiking trails, so you can walk from one side to the other, up on top, down on the other side. And this is actually what we're going to do now. We're going to start from this part. So driving from Genoa, the first place we're going to meet is the town of Camogli, which is here on top to the left. And then we're just going to go around the peninsula, first to San Fruttuoso, then to Portofino, and then to Santa Margherita and Rapallo, which are up here. How are we going to go around? Well, we have a lot of you know, buses, trains, cars, but to get to San Fruttuoso, we need to get on a boat, because San Fruttuoso, which is right here in the middle of nowhere, it can only be reached by boat or about 2 hours walk. So one of these paths will be used to get to San Fruttuoso if you like hiking. And Camogli is one of my favorite places, I must say, not only because it's very close to where I live, so I go there very often, but because it's not as touristy as Portofino, but it's just as nice. It has a beach. Our area is not an area of large sandy beaches, but it does have one. The city of Genoa, if you look at this picture, is right here where I'm pointing at, where you see this bunch of houses. That's the city of Genoa, so it's basically right across the Gulf. And Camogli has a lot to offer. It's not very touristy. I mean, it is, but it is not as Portofino. It has a beautiful promenade, wonderful weather, very nice restaurants, little shops. It's very charming. It's a very nice place. The part that you see in this picture and that you see in the next picture, it was in the medieval times called the island, because this all part that you see here, where the church and that little fortress that you see to the left of the church, were actually an island. So those buildings over here, the one to the right of the church, did not exist. And so the sea was a sort of isolating this part. Why did they have an island? Because of when it was dangerous, because of the pirates that we call here the Saracens were attacking this area, the people would go on the island and sort of pull up a bridge and be safe, like in a castle, when the pirates were attacking. Camogli was particularly in a dangerous place because it had the only and first natural port sailing from Genoa. And this is it. This is the other side of what you were seeing before. And this is a picture of the small port, and now it's fishing boats mostly. That was actually the first natural port when somebody was sailing from Genoa, so it was easy to dock. The buildings, as you can see, are all next to each other. They're very, very small. They're almost like towers. They didn't have any space. And the fortress that you see here behind was sort of surrounding the island and keeping the people safe. The church is beautiful on the inside. What you see now is an 18th century facade that is not as nice as the inside, but is really worth a visit. And that's a beautiful entrance of the port of Camogli with this nice facade. Camogli was very important for this reason, and so the houses are much bigger than Portofino here because there were a lot of people in a relatively small area. What you see, the decorations that you see on the facades of the buildings, like on this pink one, are called the trompe-l'œil. In French, it means to cheat the eye or to fool the eye, because they look three-dimensional, but they're only painted, and that's very typical of this area. This is a picture of Camogli in the winter. You can tell it's winter by the sky, by the rough seas, and by the fact that there's nobody on the beach. However, we have very mild winters. The temperatures are good, and especially like February and March, it's an ideal season to go hiking, while the spring will be better. The summer is relatively hot. Is not as hot as in some places in the south, for instance, or in some cities that are really hot. But since it's very green, it's relatively humid, so it might be a little bit harder if you're planning to do a lot of hiking or a lot of touring. But winter is a wonderful season here, and this is the promenade of Camogli, right below these big buildings, and the beautiful picture of the sunset on the beach. And then we take a boat from the little port, and with about 30 minutes sailing, we get to San Fruttuoso. San Fruttuoso is just a little place in the middle of nowhere, as you can see, but when you sail there, and all of a sudden it opens up to you this beautiful view of this abbey. The abbey was built in 3 different times from the 10th to the 15th century. Although the monks left as soon as it was completed the last time, because it started to become too dangerous. And I usually recommend, as we go around the peninsula, to have a little stop here, because it's just a magic place. What was the old abbey, which is the building that you see facing the sea, is now a little museum that tells you a little bit the story of this really marvelous place. There is a tiny beach, and the water is very, very clear, and so a lot of people stop just to take a swim just in front of the abbey. And this is it. This is the little beach. As you can see, it was built right on the water, and before the 1930s, the beach did not exist. All the stones came down during a landslide, but before it was just built on the water. It's a very, very interesting building. The monks left, and they went in another abbey that was built meanwhile between Portofino and Santa Margherita. But it's really worth the boat trip and a little time to be spent there. This is the beautiful view when you are inside the abbey, where a part is dedicated to the tombs of the family Doria, which is one of the most important families in the history of Genoa. And once again, in the inside, this is the 1200s. The people were buried there in the 1200s. Then they decided it was too complicated to travel all the time back and forth from there, and so it was abandoned. This is part of it. And as we continue our boat trip around the peninsula, we will be coming from this part, and we will reach the furthermost point of the peninsula on the eastern part, and Portofino is just in here. It's hidden in this, after this little canal, which protects it from winds and waves. When the sea is rough, Portofino is always, or almost always, very calm. And this is the second natural port that they had in the Roman times, when they were sailing from Genoa. At the time sailing was along the coast, they needed natural ports. So the first one was Camogli, the second one was Portofino. And the name Portofino comes from the Latin Portus Delphini, the port of the dolphins. This is a beautiful view of Portofino, actually taken from the top of the fortress, because Portofino needed to be protected from the pirates, and so it had the biggest fortress of this part of the coast. From here you can see the piazzetta, as we call it, the little square over here that is now restaurants and cafes, the Church of St. George, from which you can see can have a wonderful view on the peninsula and on the village. And the history of Portofino is made of fishermen until a certain point, because everything changed after World War II when the Americans were here. They went back to their countries and they were talking about this beautiful romantic place. And so in the 50s and in the 60s, all the Hollywood stars, important personalities, kings, queens, and everybody else would come to Portofino to find this charming atmosphere. These are just two pictures that I particularly like. One is Clark Gable with this little kid just by the port. And on top, this is a famous actor, Rex Harrison, who was from England, and he bought a house in Portofino and he lived there for a little while and then still spent his vacations there. So he was a very well-known personality of Portofino, and everybody knew him. And just below it's an old picture of Portofino. The little piazzetta that is now restaurants and cafes is used was used by the fishermen to fill up their fishing boats. And so it's nice to see all the pictures of Portofino during those years, because everybody was there and the atmosphere was so glamorous. It was like Saint-Tropez in France, but much smaller and much nicer to the name. So this is a wonderful view just on top here to the right hand side. You can see the Splendido Hotel. That's the best hotel of this part of the coast. Very well known all over the world. It's called the Splendido Hotel. And it's actually a little bit out of the village of Portofino. Beautiful view, beautiful pool, beautiful everything. This is another beautiful picture of the piazzetta and the port. The parish church is the Church of San Martino, which is up here. And the first picture that we saw was actually taken from the fortress that I said was built during the medieval time to defend the entrance of the port. It was then turned by this guy called Mr. Brown. He was the very first British consul in Genoa after the unification of Italy in 1861, and he turned the fortress into his private villa. Today is open to the public, so if you're willing to walk about 20 minutes up on the hill, you can get on this terrace where the big pine tree is and have the best view on Portofino, and also visit a little bit the fortress inside, although there's nothing left of the medieval times, as it was turned into, as I said, into a villa. Big yachts come into the port of Portofino, not the super big ones because there's no space. There's about a medium-sized yacht that can get in, and then the rest have to stay out, and they come down with tenders. There are ferries running regularly from San Fruttuoso and Santa Margherita to Portofino, but there is a road in this case, very narrow, in the summer sort of crowded, but there is one road that takes you there, so we can actually drive there. And so let's take once again our little boat, our little ferry or our speedboat, and leave Portofino to move further on the peninsula. We are now on the eastern side of the peninsula, of that imagined square that we saw before. And this is Santa Margherita. It's not the Pinot Grigio Santa Margherita, it's another Saint Margherita. And it's a wonderful place if you decide to stay in this area for a few days. So this is the choice that I always recommend. It's a little bit bigger than Portofino. It offers a wide choice of hotels and restaurants of all levels, from the 5 stars to the little trattoria. He has a marina. He has a beautiful promenade, and is very, very lively in the summer and every season. It's a little bit bigger. This is the port of Santa Margherita. On top of it, over here, you can see the beautiful church of St. James, a beautiful Baroque church that gives the name to this area of Santa Margherita. Next to it is, behind these trees, Villa Durazzo. That's a place It's an ancient, it was an old villa of the Renaissance times that is now public property. It's a beautiful park. And very often I go to Villa Durazzo with people for cooking classes or just food tours. And at the end of our food tours around the town, we get there just for drink and to enjoy the view, and the cooking classes about the pesto sauce and everything else. This is another nice view of Santa Margherita. Here you can see much better the Villa Durazzo over here. Just underneath is one of the little fortresses that, as we said before, it's everywhere along the coast, and it divides the part where the small beach of Santa Margherita is from the part of the marina. From Santa Margherita, you can easily walk to the next town, which is Rapallo. That's the biggest town of this part of the coast. You can see the marina of Rapallo here. Santa Margherita will be just in this area, and Portofino, as we said before, is just after this canal, just behind this last point of the peninsula. Rapallo is quite a big town compared to the other two. Of course, it's about 3 times bigger than Santa Margherita, but it's also very nice. A lot of nice shopping, not brand names, but for the locals, and a weekly market that is very lively, and a nice marina. It has a big train station where all the fast trains stop. So in 2 hours you can get to Milan, 2.5 to Florence. The area of Piedmont is 2 hours, not even, depends where you're going. So it's very convenient if during your stay in this area, you're actually planning to travel a little bit. And well, we should talk a little bit about food, because the traditional cuisine of Liguria is somehow very different from the others. Liguria in the past was a very poor area. The people here didn't have space to cultivate the land, didn't have space to have animals. And so it was a struggle in the hills and in the mountains. They had to build terraces, so cut the mountains into big steps. And so they were able to have some flat space. Mostly the region of Liguria has a vegetarian cuisine, because we didn't have meat in the past, with the exception, very few exceptions, like rabbit. And the typical sauce that you have over here is the pesto sauce, which has garlic, basil, cheese, what used to be goat cheese originally, and now is just Parmigiano, and pine nuts. And then what you see here in the lower part is one of our pies and quiche that we have. They're made with vegetables, potatoes, and this is what that's depends on the season. We have different vegetables inside. What everybody knows Liguria for is the focaccia bread, which you see here on top. The focaccia bread is basically a very thin bread with salt and olive oil that we buy every day in the bakeries, but in the past was actually sort of a hard salted bread that the sailors will have on their ships. And then when it was time to eat it, they will put olive oil on top. Now, of course, it's not like this. We buy it every day, and for us is a breakfast bread, but we usually eat it, every time we can. But a lot of people love the focaccia bread, which is called the Genoese focaccia as well. And of course, now everything has changed, so the seafood is part of what you can expect to eat in the restaurants. But as you probably know, every region in Italy has his own specialty, his own way of cooking, his own cuisine. So like in the region of Liguria, for instance, unless you go to a very, very touristy place, you won't find a lasagna because it's not from here. And so when people ask lasagna in a restaurant, it's like, oh, it's a tourist, and so they don't really like it. We do have the same type of pasta, which is lasagna with the pesto, but it's totally different from what we call the Bolognese lasagna, which is with meat and many things. And so it's really worth to try the traditional Ligurian cuisine. The type of pasta that you see here with the pesto sauce, they're called trofie, and that's the typical one that we have here. And with this beautiful waves on this little tower that is in my town, which is in between what we have seen today. It's called Recco. It's very famous for its food and its ice cream. I say arrivederci and thank you. Sorry again about the beginning. And I hope you enjoy. And I'm very glad. I'll be very happy to answer your questions.
Grazie. That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Alessandra. That was such a good insight. And I think that's like you were mentioning about the food, is Italy, people want to go back because there's so many different areas that they're all unique and have their own flavors and sights to see in history. So that was just fabulous.
Also because there's not a national thing. I mean, we figure it's pizza, but pizza, of course, it's eaten and you find it everywhere. But originally, it's not from the north. So the people from Naples are very proud of the fact that pizza is from there. And like in the north, the area where my family is from, we were eating a lot of rice because there was no wheat there. So rice and the risotto was the basic of our, main course, a lot more than pasta. So I grew up eating rice more than pasta. And this is something that, some people don't expect because it's so different from one region to another, and the north and the south and the center. So and some of the things or some of the shapes of the pasta you won't be able to find in any other region but here or in the other region where it's from.
I have to ask, is margherita pizza that's popular here, margherita pizza, is that come from Santa Margherita?
No, not even the pizza, not the Pinot Grigio and not the pizza. The margherita pizza comes from the queen, the first queen of Italy, the wife of the first king. And when after the reunification of Italy, when she went to visit the south, where she had never been, the people of Naples created this pizza with the colors of what was the new flag at the time. So the red of the tomato, the white of the cheese, and the green of the basil. Oh, and they name it Margherita because of the colors of the new flag that we had at that time.
Oh, so interesting.
So no pizza, no wine, but a lot of other things.
But I'll never look at the margherita pizza the same again after that. So thank you. I know that we spoke about this before, but everyone has heard of Cinque Terre, and someone's wondering, and it's in sort of the same area, but maybe would you just it's not technically the Italian Riviera, but do you want to just touch on that a little bit? Cinque Terre?
Yes, as I mentioned before, it's not really technical part of the Riviera. The Riviera is the name that was given historically in the 1800s to the part that corresponds to 3/4 of the Ligurian coast and the French Côte d'Azur, which was part of Italy before. So that was called the Riviera on the whole. The Cinque Terre was a place where people, with the exception of a very few amateurs, wouldn't go. It was too hard. There was no train at the time. It was too hard to reach. And even now, it's the logistics of the Cinque Terre is quite complicated. However, I still remain of the idea that Cinque Terre is the heaven for hikers. But for just one day, you end up going back and forth, trains, ferries, up and down. And so for hikers, if you want to hike and you're willing to take some time to explore the inland, it is a wonderful place. Being careful about the season. Other than that, there are a lot of people that are staying in this area and just taking the train one day to go to the Cinque Terre, which you can absolutely do from Rapallo. There is a train that takes you there in less than an hour.
Okay.
And so explore. Then, as probably a lot of people know, you have to use the train or the ferry. There are no roads over there. And so once you get in one of the 5 lands of the 5 villages, you can take trains or ferries from one to the other and just take the train back. And that's a very nice day trip that we allow to take the ferry there, have a wonderful view on the Cinque Terre without having all of the complication of staying really there. Mm-hmm. Of course, between the Cinque Terre and this area, there's also a wide choice of places. We decided not to talk about all of them, not because we didn't want this to become sort of a list, but Sestri Levante, Chiavara, they're all very nice towns, very similar to Santa Margherita with a lot of choices, and once again, and they're sort of in between.
Perfect. That's great.
If there's anything else about the Cinque Terre that you want to know, I'll be more than happy. This is just a general idea. You can have a day trip for sure.
Okay, that's great. That's perfect. Thanks for that question, Bob. And then just another question from Tracy. She has a really good, she mentions that she's been watching the Rick Steves, which I'm sure you are both well familiar with, their Monday travel talks. And he always recommends using local guides, which would be like yourselves, and just what our thoughts were on using those resources in planning trips. And I think personally, anyone who's inspiring people to travel is so wonderful. I find sometimes with those books, it's like everyone reads it and there's a charming little town, and then now everyone's read that book and everyone's flocking to that same place, and it kind of loses its charm. I think if it's a place that, say, Rhonda or I or your agent hasn't been to, we rely on companies like Federica's company, where they're in destination, they know it like the back of their hand. They're saying, you know what, in the last few years, this place, is up and coming, you got to go to, or they know the restaurants, they know the little the tips and tricks. So is there anything else that you wanted to mention about that?
Well, of course, being a tour guide, I can only recommend to have a tour guide, because I've been traveling a lot on my own for my job. And everywhere I've seen a huge difference between going on your own and being with a guide for different reasons. In Genoa, of course, because first of all, you don't get lost, and you can really use the 3, 4, 5 hours of your tour not to miss anything, not to get lost, and to really focus on what your idea of the city is, or rely on me to show you what I think it's worth seeing. But then on the coast, having at least a guide for one day will help a lot. The logistics, because in Liguria is not that easy sometimes, like it can be in other areas, because of this territory, because the train station is not always by the water, of course, or because the roads are not easy, or once again, for the hikers, it's always better to have somebody that knows the path, just in case you want to go maybe a little bit, get out of the very classical path as Portofino, San Fruttuoso, which are very well marked, but people, so it really helps you saving time to be with a guide, because we know how to put together ferries and trains and cars very well. And so you can do so many more things, because we don't waste time in missing the train or not knowing where to go. And sometimes, especially in the small places like Cinque Terre, it is essential to know things like everybody usually does the same schedule, but if you do it vice versa, it's so much better, because you don't meet all the people doing exactly the same itinerary. And some of the things that people don't think about, everybody goes to the last one and comes back, while it's not sometimes worth it, or they skip one because they've heard more of another one. So in this case, even if people might think, oh, but what there is to see in Portofino, there's a lot to tell, a lot of places to explore. And then of course, you still have the rest of the day for you, and just to sit down, enjoy, relax, shop, eat, drink, or whatever. But and then so many people are so happy, because sometimes I meet them just for one day, but I plan the other days for them, so they know exactly how to better use their time. So I'll definitely, as everywhere, but in here, the logistics is very important.
Exactly. You couldn't have said it better, Alessandra. That's perfect. We don't have any other questions. Did you want to add anything, Rhonda or Federica, before we go?
Well, I completely agree with what Alessandra was saying before. This is the difference between having a great guide, and taking the best of your time in an area. Because our guides, you saw Alessandra, that's exactly how she is when you travel with her. She's a
When I
source
don't have
of
to use a computer.
information. No, I mean, it's true. I mean, it's like being with a friend. I love your way of being a guide, because you're not just telling the history and the art and people get bored. We learn so much from you. And also for the logistic, when you have a driver and a guide, it's much better. But of course, Julie and Rhonda, you know this better than I do, and we're here to help when the moment comes. Hopefully soon, we said.
Hopefully soon. We can't wait. Can't wait to send
I
people
know.
back.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And I just wanted to add, and you echo what everybody's saying, and just to let everybody out there, all our viewers know that we're going to be bringing Federica back, and maybe some of her expert guides in some of the other areas of Italy to showcase it, because they are fantastic. And just listening to you, Alessandra, it's amazing, and your knowledge is so important to have when you're traveling, and just to get a really sense and to immerse yourself. I think a lot of us want to travel like that now and really learn about where we are and having unique experiences. And so, yeah, you are fantastic. And thank you so much for
And
joining.
if I can add one more thing, is that probably when all this is going to be sort of over, or at least will allow us to travel, Genoa, for instance, is a place where you never have the crowds that you have in Florence or Rome or Venice. It's now there are a lot of tourists, but with the exception of maybe the days of big cruise ships, where it's more crowded, especially in the 2 or 3 main places, is not a crowded city at all. So you can find many alternative paths to go to the cathedral, for instance, where you basically don't meet anyone. So it's also a thought in this sense, and the sense is also the inland of Liguria. It's a great place. It has for bikers, for hiking, for walking, or just for a day trip. And it's amazing how, it's a day of sun in June and everybody's packed on the beach, but you drive 15 minutes on the inland and it's just me and my dog. So it's like, it's really amazing how it's really quick here to get out of the beaten path and on the crowds. So I think it's a plus in this region, because at the very beginning, I think we all feel sort of uncomfortable in a super crowded place like we were before, right? Or sitting in a restaurant where it's really a crowd around us. And so Liguria can really be a good option to restart our adventures around the world.
That's a really good point. Thank you so much, Alessandra.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And guests would be so happy to have a tour with you. I hope to get to do that one day. And Federica, thank you so much for being with us, and just for everything that you do. You just run an amazing company, and we're just so proud to partner with you. And we know when we send clients with you that they're just going to have the best time ever. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Enjoy your evening, and grazie again, and we hope to see everybody again. Take care.
Grazie, ciao.
Ciao.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Ciao.
Ciao.